episode 39, The Slump Buster. Promo code SLUMP on 3. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Slump Buster. Quiet on the set. Make sure my mic is on. Eric Dre and Juju Dog diving towards the pylon. Go for two, so damn rude. Recognize authority. Spitting tips for fantasy. No way you're outscoring me. Bold predictions with conviction every single day. Sports addiction, no restriction. Kicking game like Pele. He's the greatest. What's the basis? Pick an athlete. Let's debate this game. Outrageous trading places. Sudden death. Take 10 paces. Turn and shoot. Boys the truth. Mamba mentality. Future greats take their place. Dreams become reality. Blowing outside, knocked it out the park. Your boy discovered fire like a rock with a spark. Refs acting like Neanderthals. Phantom flags, nothing costs. Heartbreak losses, tragic falls. Every week discuss it all. Settle in, listen up. Free your time like Andrew Luck. Show's about to start. I suggest you buckle up.
Promo code SLUMP.
Promo code SLUMP.
All right, guys. Well, welcome into the episode. I'm your host, Juju Talk Sports, Julian Martinez. I am joined, of course, by my co-host, Andre Wynn. We're welcome back, C Money there in the background. And just wait till the end of the episode because you're probably interested in promo code SLUMP. What's that about? We have a special announcement at the end. But as far as our guests on this show, the fantastic, the spectacular, the stunning Kayla Ward. Welcome in, Kayla.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So you mentioned you're calling in from Pacific Standard Time. Where exactly are you located right now?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh, LA. Okay, gotcha. So with that said, how's everything going on over there with quarantine and everything like that? You mentioned more time to spend with your pets. You seem like you're pretty active right there.
Yeah, I still manage to get out. I get a lot of flack for it online. But
of course,
even amid lockdown, like the parks are closed technically, but there's still people who go out to the park. You just stay distanced from everybody. People go out and get their workout on. Near the basketball court on them, they've put boards and kind of blocks across the rims now, so you can't play on the court anymore. It's kind of weird, but I get it because I don't want people grouping all together and sweating and, you know.
Probably not the best thing for someone hoping to be a basketball prospect and not have access to a good hoop.
It's frustrating. Yesterday, I actually went out with my trainer and we found a court that wasn't completely roped off. It did have the locks on the rims, but we went ahead and set up some cones, ran through some drills. I shot at the goal, but just shot short so the ball wouldn't get stuck up there. So I was still able to get a good workout in. I just can't actually work on that part of the game at the moment.
That is tough, but I mean, worst case, I mean, you'll still probably have a better jump shot than Ben Simmons.
Wow.
That's
true. That's true.
Taking shots here. But
fire away.
Gotcha. So are you just overall, would you describe yourself as a sports junkie? Because I saw you messing around with the football as well.
Yeah, football, the frisbee, softball, tennis, racquetball, whatever I can do. I just love to be outdoors. I'm really hoping this summer, if we get to have a summer, I'm hoping to pick up some surfing lessons as well. Love to get out on the water.
Yeah, that's awesome. So are you doing any home workouts? I know you said you did the cone drills sort of while you're out on the court. Is there anything that you're doing from home, from your living room, garage?
I'm in an apartment complex, so I can't do a whole lot with a basketball in here. It would just really anger everybody. So I do just a lot of core and just specific, just workout training at home. But when I go out to the park, that's when I can work on agility, on ball handling skills, on different things like that.
I tried Insanity from my house, almost died. So yeah, let's see. So obviously you're calling from LA, so that's interesting. So are you a Lakers fan? Let me start by asking.
Oh, no. I'm sorry to upset any Laker fans, but I'm not originally from LA. I've lived here for 3 years now. I actually grew up a Warriors fan, which is crazy because I grew up in Arkansas. But the reason being is I was the old school, Run TMC fan. Tim Hardaway was my favorite player. So to watch that trio of Chris Mullin, Mitch Richmond, and Tim Hardaway play, that was the kind of the first run and gun offense. And that's what I was hooked on.
Yeah, I am very upset. Me being a Lakers fan that doesn't live in LA and they're right down the street from you and you're not a Lakers fan? Whatever. Anyways, so what are your thoughts?
I can't be. I just can't be.
It's okay. I'll forgive you. We're all wrong sometimes.
I can appreciate how talented LeBron is.
Uh-huh.
But as far as basketball goes, I feel like he's kind of a prima donna. Like he demands to have another star, and Davis had to sit out and kind of be a punk in New Orleans until he got traded. I'm not a fan of all of that.
Yeah. Now, I will be honest, I was not the biggest LeBron fan before he came to the Lakers, but now that he's on my team, right, I'm like, well, I sort of have to cheer for the guy, right?
You guys are having an amazing year.
I know. And this whole COVID-19 pandemic sort of puts the season in jeopardy. So I guess sort of getting into that, one, we'll start with your team, the Warriors. What were your thoughts on this season? I know it was kind of rough, and what do you think of their future going forward?
They just need their stars healthy. This season was shot for them. I was truthfully paying a lot more attention to Dallas this year because I knew the Warriors were kind of just going to put the season on the back burner. I did spend several years in Dallas as well, and I was able to attend most of the Mavs games, so I became a huge, kind of just temporary fan. I still stay with them. Like, Luka is insane, so I love to watch Luka and kind of learn from his game a little bit.
Yeah, no, Luka's tons of fun to watch. I still got to make it out there, so I'm actually in my hometown right now, Albuquerque, but usually I'm in Austin, so it should just be a quick up the road kind of thing. As far as the Warriors' future, though, I mean, they have a great situation. Let's face it, they're going to get a top 5 pick in the lottery this year. They obviously have Clay, Steph coming back. They're kind of set up to bounce right back into that top tier where they've been the last few years. As far as the Mavericks go, I mean, the sky's the limit right now, depending on if they could get maybe one more guy in there to kind of solidify that starting 5.
Yeah, I think the Warriors definitely will make a comeback. That's no question. They've just got too much talent, too much determination. Like you're talking about Steph Curry, who was told he wouldn't be successful in the NBA because he was too small, he wasn't strong enough, he wasn't athletic enough, and he's won several championships. He's been an MVP. He's the best 3-point shooter we've ever seen. And then the Mavericks, I kind of agree. I think they need another piece or two, but also I think they need a little bit more ball movement. It's a lot of relying on Luka when I watch them play, which can only get them so far.
Well,
the
you
ball's
think
got to come out of his hands a little bit more.
Well, you think that Kristaps another year gain healthier. Eventually, he's going to probably take on a bigger role too. So hopefully that kind of helps in spread distribution, spreading the ball around between them.
Yeah. I would like to see him get closer to the paint a little bit more. Sometimes I get frustrated watching him just camp out at the 3-point line. I get it. He's a big man who can shoot, but sometimes I want to see him kind of help spread the offense a little bit more instead of camping out next to the person with the ball.
Actually, did you have an opinion on that book that just came out this week regarding kind of Kevin Durant's departure from the Warriors? I think it's kind of something like the victory mentality or something like that. I don't know. Did that cross your news headline this week?
No.
It's interesting. It just apparently talking about kind of what went wrong there. A lot of the criticisms we kind of have about KD, just maybe a little bit too rabbit ears to everything on the social media, but basically saying they love Steph more than me. It's well, Steph's been there and they won a title before you. So,
I mean, just with any sports, there's a lot of ego that goes into some of the players. And especially when you've been on teams where you're surrounded by other guys who are extremely talented, but yet you kind of feel that you're the most talented person on that team and you're not really getting the credit that you feel you deserve. Because KD is an amazing player. It's one of the hardest guard I think that we've seen come through the game. In a way, I kind of get it, but sometimes I just feel that drive and push to be that sole star can ruin a career.
But, he kind of also fed into that by even going to the Warriors. I mean, one of the main criticisms when you did that is you're going to a 70-win team,
Yeah, well, he wanted to win. So he wanted to win. That was an opportunity to do that. But I think then it was kind of okay, well, now I'm not the main star anymore.
Well,
so he wanted to prove he could do it somewhere else.
Well, the name of that book, if anyone's interested, is The Victory Machine. I've been hearing a lot about it. I might go out there and, hey, we all need stuff to do, so I'll probably go buy it myself at this point. Give me something to listen to or read. Books on tape. I could listen to it. One of those. All right, Kayla. Well, let's kind of get into it. So the story that kind of crossed our eyes a few weeks ago and was one of the main catalysts behind me saying, you know what, I should probably reach out to her. She has a great story to tell. Let's kind of go through it. Kayla Ward fighting to become the first trans woman ever to try out for the WNBA. And obviously this is very relevant today as we're recording on the day of the WNBA draft, actually taking place as we speak right now. It's kind of funny because this came through Total Pro Sports too. We actually had a guest the previous week who's not too fond of Total Pro Sports, but tell me, Kayla, as far as basketball, why did this become a goal of yours? You're in your mid-30s from my understanding. Is this always been something that you've been passionate about, your basketball background as a whole?
I've always wanted to play ball. That was my biggest passion growing up. And a big part of that is because basketball at the same time was my distraction. It was the one thing I could go to escape reality for a while. When I grew up as a child, I grew up in the 80s and in the 90s. We didn't have social media and all the internet and everything back then. So I felt alone. I didn't understand that it was okay to be quote unquote different. So going to the basketball court was one place where I felt like I did belong. So that was kind of my thing growing up and what I was always doing. I played all the way through college. I didn't actually play on the teams. I played a lot of rec leagues, a lot of tournaments. In high school, I was doing a tournament and I actually met Ron Brewer, who played with the Sixers back in the day with Dr. J. His son even went pro and he played at the University of Arkansas. And he pulled me aside afterwards and kind of talked to me a little bit about what I wanted to do, where I was playing, and took down my information. And he had Nolan Richardson III, who was one of the coaches with the Razorbacks at the time, give me a call, set up a tryout. But I didn't really have enough confidence or belief in myself. Plus, I was still really struggling with the idea of being around such a, I guess like a big college like that was such a macho, like guy persona program where I feel like I really wouldn't fit in. So I never kind of took that leap. I get a lot of feedback saying, well, it's ridiculous that I even want to try to play since I haven't had that kind of level of experience. I think it's kind of cocky or arrogant to think that I could play on the same level as these professional women, which maybe I can't. I've played against NBA players, guys who've played in Europe, and I've held my own. That's the only reason I kind of feel like maybe I still could if I can get myself in that shape. But it's always been a dream of mine. I let it go after college because I got married and I was chasing, jobs and management and trying to really support a family. And so basketball just kind of went away. I was focused on family and mission work because I got heavily involved in the church.
With that said, how much time have you spent over the last couple years trying to get back in that shape, that ability to potentially compete against these women in the WNBA? What kind of time schedule does that look like sans COVID-19? If you were just on a normal training routine, what would you be looking at?
This year got all messed up because of that. But I was looking at least two a days and sometimes 3 a days, doing 2 and 3 hours at a time, everywhere from just general workouts to drills to agility workouts. So it was going to be looking at this like a full-time job. I was going to be working about 8 to 10 hours a day just on training.
So Kayla, you mentioned that you sort of got to playing a really high level of basketball later on in your career, right? So it wasn't necessarily like the traditional route. We see a lot of kids start from youth, they're playing AAU, then they go through competitive high school into competitive college and then into pros. So for you, what's sort of been the hardest? Has it been the physical aspects of basketball and understanding, I guess sort of your shot motion and the speed, the agility, or has it been more of the mental aspect of learning, hey, what's the correct play to make? Should I pass the ball here? Should I shoot it? Should I drive into the basket? Which has been, I guess, more difficult, and how are you addressing those difficulties?
It's a great question. It's more the physical for me right now because at my age and not being competitive for so many years and having had injuries in the past, it's hard to get my body back in that shape. I blew out a knee in college playing softball. And I grew up extremely poor. So that's another part of the reason I really didn't compete much in high school or junior high. I had no transportation to be able to make that happen. I rode the bus. I couldn't stay after and work on the teams and do anything like that. My parents told me right away that just wasn't going to be a possibility. So I didn't even try. College, I tried, but when I tried out, because I went to a Baptist college, the coach pulled me aside and said, you had a great tryout, but I only have room for one walk-on spot. And I already knew who I was pulling in. Are you still coming to this college? Do you have other scholarships? Are you, would you be willing to try out next year? And that was kind of my plan and intention until I did mission work and we got to work with these kids in San Antonio, these inner city kids, and just seeing them cry when we left because they hadn't had that much interaction and attention probably ever. So that became more my passion and my drive. And so every summer, every spring break, every chance I had, I was going back there and working with those kids. So I let being extremely competitive in sports go away a long time ago. So getting that back physically has been tough. I won't lie. There's days that I just kind of wonder why. Is it really worth it? Because I'm going to get nothing but pushback. It's such a sensitive subject right now. You see articles all the time popping up about different anti-trans bills, especially regarding trans youth. And then like to know if my body can really do it or if it's just going to snap at any point, like one of the bones I've already broke. So I guess mentally that pulls in a little bit, but it is more the physical side, really just getting my body back to that conditioning.
When it comes to like someone who has transitioned or is transitioning, is like there any like other kind of like physiological damages like become like when you're recovering from injuries or stuff that kind of factors that we may not be aware of?
I mean, not that I'm aware of. I know all my injuries happened before I transitioned, before hormone replacement therapy and all that came into effect. So I don't know if that plays in. I know that with HRT, you do lose a lot of muscle mass. So I lost a lot of strength. And I noticed that progressively throughout at least my first year of transition, because I worked at a furniture store. I was a manager, but I had to do everything there. So it was still sales. I had to move the furniture, unload the trucks. And when you're unloading these huge sofas that have like recliners in them and they're mechanical, they're heavy. I used to be able to just do that easy. And it got harder and harder and harder. And now I can't even move my couch in my apartment by myself. Gotcha. So you do lose that muscle mass.
Tell me something. So obviously this, you mentioned, this is a polarizing topic. In particular, the last like couple of years, this has really become a thing. So with that said, what's kind of like the initial feedback that you've received like when the story like first hit? Because I'm sure there's a ton of positive, there's a ton of negative. Is it kind of just balance out, or do you even pay attention anymore? Where are you at with that?
It's mostly negative. BuzzFeed reached out and did a video with me toward the end of last year. And most of the comments in the video were just hate. Were just ugly. I had to stop reading them because it was kind of angering me. I didn't want to like snap back at anybody, but I wanted to educate them. And it just gets very time consuming to reply to thousands and thousands of just hateful messages. A lot of people, unfortunately, just regurgitate things that they hear without actually knowing any base behind it. And out in the media right now, it's mostly all just negative about trans athletes. You hear a few who have some success, and all of a sudden it's completely unfair regardless. Even though there's hundreds of trans athletes competing in different sports that you never hear of. And the fact that the Olympics have had a policy in place since 2004, which would allow trans athletes to compete, and we haven't had a single trans Olympian yet. It gets tough. It really does. I have support from friends and from family, obviously my trans community, but for the most part, no one wants to really hear it. It's just, people just want to regurgitate the negative.
Yeah, and that's always difficult, especially when you are working so hard. You're working just as hard, if not harder, than anybody else to reach your goals, and all you're hearing is constant negativity. And so going back to, the LA Sparks, like you had said, how they have their open tryouts, were they receptive to you coming out and trying out? Have you been able to get a workout in with them?
I haven't been able to get any feedback from them at all. I've tried reaching out on multiple occasions. Same thing with the WNBA. I've tried to make contact with them. It hasn't been until this past year that I've been able to kind of make some connections that can get me those connections. I know somebody who knows the head of the Sparks operation, that he can give me a sit-down meeting at some point. I did just become an ambassador with Athlete Ally, which is an organization that focuses on LGBTQ inclusion in sports. And they're doing amazing work. They've partnered with hundreds, probably if not at least 1,000 professional athletes across all sports. And they've had talks with the WNBA about trans athletes. And currently they said their last conversation was hypothetical. So they really weren't taking it seriously. They're like, well, we don't have a policy in place because it's just a hypothetical. No one's tried. We don't see it happening anytime soon. So they just kind of brushed it off. But their Athlete Ally is going to reach back out to their contacts and see if we can't have a discussion about the whole process now.
So you said it's more of an open tryout. Is that correct? Or do you have to go through any particular avenue to get in the gym basically?
From what I understood before, I don't think they're holding open tryouts anymore. But what it was, I'm sure you had to go through some steps, but it was pretty much open if you wanted to come try out. Whether that meant trans athletes or not, I don't know. That's where I kind of have to reach out and make some more connections and at least maybe see if that door's open. But now there's, and I didn't pull it up first to remember the name of it, but now there's basically a sports combine that's held for women, and it gets them in front of scouts for professional leagues throughout the world, as well as the WNBA. So it's a bigger combine that provides more opportunity to be seen. So that's kind of the avenue now.
as far as kind of like that goes, so like when you first like go into like stuff like trying out and everything like that, what's kind of like the steps you have to take as far as like the disclosure process? Obviously, Caleb, from first glance, obviously no one would like assume you were anything more than like just your everyday woman. So like when you walk into a gym, do you have to kind of like go over like, this is basically my background, this is what this and this, or how does that kind of like work, like in terms of opening that up to the league itself?
To me, honest disclosure is necessary. That way, there's no problems later. Plus, if you Google my name, it's going to pop up everywhere anyway. I decided when I transitioned back in 2012 that I was going to share my story online from day one. I wanted to build a platform that I could educate, encourage, and inspire. That's been my goal from day one. I want other people to be able to live their truth, to be happy, to be free in who they are. And I want to educate those who may not understand. I've met a lot of people throughout my journey so far in different jobs and different places that had never met anybody who was trans before.
Guilty.
And a lot of people don't. I mean, it's not something that you just see every day. We're a very small percentage of the population. And there's even more who feel or identify as trans, and you're seeing more non-binary, people who kind of like break down the gender binary and spectrum. But there's still so much stigma and fear that so many people just hide. And I want to show people that they can be successful and live their life and be free. I am very privileged. I understand my privileges of, I'm a white woman. I'm quote unquote passable. So I have these freedoms that some never do. So whatever privileges I have, I want to use for that platform to break down barriers for others.
So Kayla, you mentioned the success of some trans athletes, right? Like you hear these, I guess viral stories of there was, for instance, a state champion in Texas, right, for wrestling. And in this case, it was actually a woman that wanted to transition to a male, but then the state of Texas forced her to stay competing with women athletes. You hear of different track stars and all that. So I guess in your opinion, how do you feel about their success? Because in some ways it's a double-edged sword. Like, yes, it's great that we're able to have these successful trans athletes, but like you said, it also sort of hurts your cause in that now everybody thinks, oh, trans athletes, they just want, an easy path, right? That they just want to dominate an easier sort of side of sports, right, as being a male transitioning to female and just dominating female sports, for instance.
I have so much to say about that. First of all, I know exactly who you're talking about with those youth that have had some successes. I've been able to interact with them a little bit. There is a documentary about them that I would encourage everybody to see once it's available. I've seen it probably 4 times now. It's been going to different film festivals. It's called Changing the Game. So Changing the Game doc, and it follows the lives of these trans youth. There's 4 of them. Includes 5 if you count the 2 girls in Connecticut. But Mac Beggs, the trans male in Texas, that's where a lot of problems happen with people pushing for trans athletes to compete in the gender on their birth certificate. Mac is a trans male, but because Texas has these laws in place, he had to compete with the women. So now you've got this male on testosterone. So clearly he's getting stronger. He's doing all these things to build up this strength, competing against women. And he hated it. If you watch this documentary, you could see how like torn he is after every match. You have people in the stands yelling at him, threatening his life. And all he wanted to do is compete against boys, but no one would allow him to. Now he's in college and he can compete against men. And he's happier than he's ever been. All he wants to do is compete and be a part of something. Same thing with all these youth right now that are being harassed and told that they don't belong. So many times in society, when you're part of a marginalized group where you're already told you don't belong, it's hard to really find space. Family, friends can reject you. You have people who are on the religious side who preach against you. You have politicians who are creating bills, trying to make your life more difficult, trying to erase you from society. School can be so complicated as it is for youth. Add this layer on top of it, and you don't know where you can go to build community, to have friends. And sports provides that for everybody. All of us on here love sports, or you wouldn't be talking about it. It provides something. It connects us. It keeps us active and healthy. That's all these kids want. And they're being told because they're quote unquote different, they can't participate. When trans athletes have success, especially trans youth, because your bodies still haven't really completely developed yet, why can't we chalk it up to training, to hard work, and to passion and commitment instead of, well, you were born this way, so it's unfair. I had somebody comment and tell me the other day that it's clearly unfair because men are just superior. That was his comment. He said, there's middle school boys could beat professional women at their sports. That to me was ridiculous. I mean, have you ever played sports against any of these pro women? Have you ever been in the same room as them? I've hung out with some of the Sparks. Those are some big girls. I dwarf compared to a lot of them. So there's too many stereotypes going around. It's just unfair, especially to youth.
It does seem like a lot of people are trying to one size fits all this argument. I mean, we mentioned, I'm sorry, I'm slipping on the name again.
Mack Beggs, yes.
Mack Beggs, yes. Like you said, like he just wanted to compete like in the bracket that made the most sense. And, actually Andre and I both come from a wrestling background too. So we understand that the inner competitor put him in the bracket that he wants to be in. I mean, it just makes sense. And as you mentioned too, like he didn't ask for that. He didn't go out of his way. So everyone, I think for the most part, from at least my inner circle of people I've talked to, are pretty much, the state kind of fudged that one up on that one.
Yeah, but that's the backwards policies that exist. And that's what other states are pushing to have in their policies. It states you have to compete as the gender on your birth certificate. So when they're saying that trans athletes have an advantage, what about when you push it the other way? And clearly, like Mac has an advantage. Had he competed against men as he wanted to, would that advantage still have been there? No.
Do you think there is a difference, though, in female to male versus male to female transitions, like in terms of competition?
It's basically lined out in policies that there is. For example, like the International Olympic Committee, their policy, a female to male trans athlete doesn't really have any requirements. You don't have to have a year of HRT. You don't have to do any of these specific things or test at certain levels. Trans women do. And I get that because they want to try to make sure that the biological factors of testosterone or whatever are all kind of equal, which there's still not much science proof behind either way. I've researched a lot of that. There's been studies done on Olympic level elite athletes where, and I'll line this out first, testosterone levels for women, cisgender women, athletes are usually between 1 and 2, with some varying higher. Like you've seen Caster Semenya, who there's been a whole debate about that because her testosterone levels were just off the chart. Men are typically from around 7 to 25 in there. So they say for trans women in the Olympics, you have to be under, and these numbers are like nanomoles per liter of testosterone. They say trans women have to be at 10 or below, and they're switching that now to say 5 or below. Now in this test, this research done of these Olympic elite athletes, over 25% of the men tested below 10 nanomole per liter. So not a high testosterone. And then about 7% of the total test study was under 5%. And those were typically like your power lifters. So testosterone being linked directly to strength and all of that was kind of debunked with that research. And then your cross country and track athletes test higher for a female estrogen than testosterone.
Interesting. So, yeah, I mean, the bottom line with the subject is there's still a lot of research that hasn't been done, is probably the biggest thing we could say about it.
Exactly. I mean, because to me, there's also other factors that come into play. I mean, we can never talk about sports being completely fair. There's advantages, there's disadvantages. You have socioeconomic, you've got different things that play into who has access and who can succeed. So I think to just go off biological factors is kind of unfair, especially when there's not much proof out there that trans athletes are really dominating, because they're not.
No, these points are really enlightening, and I had no idea about all of this information. And so when we talk about the Olympics, like you've said, we haven't had any trans Olympians, right? Especially not any Olympian medalists. So why is that? I know we talked about some of the other factors, right? Poverty and training situations. But why do you think we haven't had very successful trans Olympian athletes? And when do you think we'll see our first few?
I think part of the reason we haven't is because of the stigma. There's so much fear in our community just for safety and for freedoms. So sometimes when you really push that boundary, things can get kind of scary. There's a lot of threats. I've had death threats. I know other community members have had death threats just for existing and wanting to kind of push that envelope. There's such a hard push to eliminate trans people from society. So a lot of people are afraid to really make that leap. You've also got, I know some people like Chris Mosier, who has been trying to break into the Olympics. He's sponsored by Nike. He's done some different competitions to get there, and he trains so hard, but we're not really taken seriously. And the access is limited in a way because sports can have this very toxic masculinity in type of environment. And it's very off-putting for people who are in a marginalized community like the LGBTQ. You have a lot of, homophobic type talk in the locker rooms. You have different problems with that. So a lot of people in the queer community are afraid to get involved in sports. The doors aren't completely open to that. And so that pushes a lot of people away from really competing and really breaking down those barriers. I think that's part of it. The other part is we don't have the advantages that everybody assumes.
With that said, Kayla, do you think that these current standards in place you mentioned with the Olympics are about right or as bad as they're going to get for the time being? Or what's a realistic timeline to have like a set standard of like the biological factors for establishing guidelines in the future?
I don't know, because there's still so much that needs to be done as far as understanding and helping open those doors for it to even happen. I think the Olympics have had it in policy in place for years. The NCAA has a policy in place. Different sports leagues have set their own rules, like the LPGA, the Tennis Association. Like there's different things already set. And until people can get into those leagues and compete, we don't know if those policies are good enough. I believe they are, but that's somebody from my side who is trying to compete and understand what hormones have done to my body. And the fact that I've played against men and women, and I don't know, it's tough. There's just going to be a constant argument back and forth until we see trans athletes competing who aren't succeeding and actually knowing that they're there. That's the thing. There's a lot of trans athletes competing, but we don't know of them.
One kind of like thing, so obviously we don't have a great like precedent for like trans athletes in like the Olympics, but we do have a former Olympian who transitioned later in life, Bruce/Caitlyn Jenner.
Caitlyn, yes.
Yes.
I know Caitlyn.
So obviously, by the Olympic standards kind of like that are laid out right now, Caitlyn dominated in 1976. In theory, if she transitioned in 1977 and competed in the 1980 Olympics, do you think that would be kind of like an okay standard, considering we know a few things about like her success in the Olympics, that like the time trial she ran was, I think, a 10.8-4 100-meter dash, and that would have been at the time the record for like women's athletics in the 100-meter dash. When you look at kind of like statistics like that, what's kind of like your initial thoughts in terms of like the biological factors? Would you still allow like hypothetically a Caitlyn who transitioned in 1977 to compete in the 1980 Olympics based off what we know about what she did in 1976 under her previous alias?
So this is where I feel that a lot of people who have fears about trans athletes, this is where their mind goes. Because I get comments all the time that talk about, well, what if LeBron James transitions? Or what if Steph Curry? That's so far fetched and unrealistic. I know Caitlyn did transition later in life, and this is who she always knew who she was. But when you take these, we'll call them gods of sports, because to be honest, they're the top of the top in their game. Those people the transitions aren't happening, and those people aren't transitioning to then compete in sports, to have an opportunity to succeed in the other sport. Women players get paid way less than men. The opportunities, the facilities, everything is subpar compared to. So I think that just talking about that kind of like helps ignite that stigma that superior athletes are going to then transition and compete against women, and it's just totally unfair. So I don't like the scenario, but if that scenario were to have existed, I think that yes, she should have had the opportunity to compete, because that would have been several years. She would have gone through this medical transition, and it would have slowed her times. Her muscles would change. The body fat in your body moves around in positions differently. A lot happens on the inside that will affect performance on the outside.
I guess the main reason I frame that way, because the biggest like conflict in terms of like the trans athlete debate has been in track and field sports when it comes to the Connecticut lawsuit currently ongoing. And one of the unique things that actually did happen about this was recently one of the girls that actually was involved in the lawsuit actually ended up winning.
Yeah, she beat Terry in the last two matches. for a state championship. Yeah.
So congrats to her. But at the same time, you know, doesn't that kind of contradict like the ongoing lawsuit that she's currently involved in? Does it matter? Because apparently I guess they've ran consistently throughout their high school careers and it was her first victory over her. Could that also be like a factor potentially of the fact that you did mention Terry she's been transitioning now for maybe about, if I had to guess, about 3-4 years. This news headline has been in the forefront.
Yeah, it's been for a couple of years. And I went when I got your email and I kind of researched everything, I went through and I looked at the statistics for the races. And Chelsea Mitchell, she's consistently winning almost every race she competes in. Now that her and Terry go to different high schools. And from what I saw, like looking at the stats, they don't compete against each other very often. And here lately, when they have, Chelsea's been winning. So to me, that comes down to, is that more the parents? Are the parents in the background saying, well, we don't want you to lose to this freak, quote unquote, because that's just not fair. That's a man. And that kind of talk filters down. Again, it's regurgitated. Kids will repeat what they hear their parents say. And there's usually parents in those stands at Terry and Andrea's matches that are yelling, screaming obscenities, all on baseless assumptions. These girls train hard. Terry and Andrea put everything they have into this. It's their escape. When you're transitioning or when you feel different, you're isolated and alone, and you go to what you can do, what you love. And so they became very good at what they're doing. And so now they're being harassed and bullied because they're good at something. Chelsea's extremely talented as well. And she's consistently winning. So these girls competing against her aren't going to hurt her chances at getting scholarships or moving to the next level. Terry and Andrea, even though they're having success, they likely won't get those same opportunities. They're not going to get scholarships. They're not going to get an opportunity probably to run in college because there's so much controversy around them. So to add this lawsuit on top of it is just, it's frivolous and unnecessary.
So what do you think it's going to take for society to get to the point where some of these high-level athletes can start getting those scholarships? Is it going to take, maybe, let's say, a head coach, right, of a college program that's just like, hey, I'm going to go all in and I'm okay with, recruiting trans athletes? Do you think it's got to be, we just have to socialize the concept a little bit more, right? And I hate to call it a concept, but to get everybody comfortable with trans athletes competing at a higher level, what do you think needs to happen in society in order to, I guess, move forward for trans athletes?
I think for one, an attack on trans people stopping would be extremely helpful. All these bathroom bills that pop up, banning trans people from the military, different policies and things that happen that kind of put us on the outskirt as freaks of nature or something that shouldn't exist. All of that needs to stop. You even see in movies and television, I'm sure you've seen articles where there's a debate of a cis male playing a trans woman on a TV show or something, like Eddie Redmayne did a couple years ago. Because it's this perception of we're men in dresses when it's far from that. So I think a societal perception has to change. And for the way for that to happen is maybe some high profile people come out in support. Like there's a lot of attack against trans youth, but you see Gabrielle Union and Dwayne Wade step out with their daughter and let her live in her truth and her light and use that as an education tool because their daughter wants that. Zaya wants that. And I think that's amazing. I think it's beautiful. And I think if more situations like that occur, it starts breaking down barriers a little bit. Some education can go a long way if people are willing to listen. But sometimes that takes a lot. It really takes a lot. We still see to this day racism, and it's just ignorant. I don't understand why people still can't get past that. We still see people having problems with gay marriage. Let people get married and live their life. What does it have to do with you? So it's barriers that are going to take a long time to break down.
In the wake of stuff like the Connecticut lawsuit and the Idaho transgender bill, what are some steps that you took as like one of the main advocates to kind of like push against those causes?
Putting as many messages out online as I could. Reaching out through Twitter, through Facebook, through Instagram, contacting people I knew that may know some people in those states. So you could reach out to the governors, to the politicians, to, call in, to email, to tweet, to do whatever you can to help bring some awareness about it and have more people contact the representatives and say, hey, this isn't okay. We need to stop these bills. Unfortunately, the governor in Idaho passed the bills into law, but the ACLU is suing. So we're going to try to stop that, and we will have success in that because it is discrimination.
Are there some sports that you think that should have some sort of restrictions? Because we have seen like a notable example in the MMA world come about, Fallon Fox. Now, Fallon was wrestled a handful of fights there, and some of them would say she dominated based off like her biological factors. She did get beat, though. She did have one loss there to a very talented woman herself. I believe I had her name here. Ashley Evans Smith was the person that defeated her. Now, what are your thoughts on stuff like combat sports, Kayla?
As someone who doesn't really watch combat sports, it's hard. I don't know. I know like with MMA, it is done off a weight class. So I know they're very similar in size. And again, I know I've lost muscle mass. I definitely can't fight against a guy. And I know some girls they're even my size, like cis girls who are strong, really, really strong. And I wouldn't want to take a punch from them. So I don't know. I don't have a lot to interject there just because I don't know the sports very well. I think that if policies are in place that allow competition, and there should be allowed, because you don't want to push people out just because of something that we don't understand.
I believe that's where they do differ. I was reading that it's a 2-year standard versus the Olympic standard that we did mention earlier of the 1 year on like the hormone replacement therapy drugs. Now, as far as that goes, in terms of the biological factors, do you think there is a proper like time frame of transition before being allowed?
Transition is kind of an ongoing process. I do know that I think a year is very fair, just because for myself, I did notice a lot of changes in that first year. It's hard to tell somebody, I'm sorry, you have to sit out for 5 years. You have to lose 5 years of eligibility. So if you're going to college, you're just not going to get to compete.
If you're comfortable answering this too, when did you choose to transition?
So when I was in college, actually, I'm going to back up that a little bit further. Before I had internet, I knew I was different. I just didn't know how to tell anybody because, again, there wasn't much talk about this subject back then. And I was in a position in my life where it wasn't the safest. My first step, I was a drug trafficker, a bookie. There was a lot of problems. It's not something I could just come out and say to people and it'd be okay. My mom and I used to get beat all the time. But I do remember when I was little and I would play with little kids in the neighborhood, like I always wanted to be the mom if we played house. I always wanted to be Chitara. I don't know if you watch Thundercats at all.
Thunder.
Yes. Old cartoon. Yeah, I always wanted to be Chitara. Like I always knew, but I ran from that. Went to college, got involved in religion, and just kind of hid it even further. And then I even got married. But back in junior high school, when I did have internet, I found out I wasn't alone. But I thought, okay, now I'm involved in the church, so this just isn't right. I can't do this. So I didn't really pursue living my truth right away because I was afraid. But I got married, thought this is it. I'm going to be what everybody expects me to be and everything's going to be fine. Over the years, a wall got built up, more got learned about everything. She learned more about things and she asked for a divorce in 2011. I was actually contemplating suicide when she left. I actually had a bottle of pills and had, the house was dark. I was just ready to end it. And my cats were really the ones who kind of kept me going. They were licking the tears off my face and I had a commitment to take care of them. So threw the pills away and reached out to a gender therapist. That was the end of 2011. And that's when I began my journey. So it's technically about 2012. So it's been 8 years now. And it wasn't until recently that sports really kind of came back into my life because I went through that whole period of finding myself and really discovering life again, really.
Please get pets, people, because pets can be lifesavers. Like, honestly, not that I was creeping, but I was going through your Instagram and actually pulled up, like, for example, this pic here. There we go. So you're saying so that was all together an 8-year process. So that took from 2011 on to 2020 overall to get from point A to point C, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that picture, the picture on the far left was actually in college, but it was still who I was in 2011 too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot to go through. Let me ask, what's your favorite sports movie, Kayla?
Ooh, I would go with, there's two. I would go with Above the Rim.
Okay.
And White Man Can't Jump.
Ah, classic. That's actually one that we haven't had, because let's see, we've had about 10 guests. We haven't had that one dropped yet, but glad that someone can finally throw in a little bit of, is that 1980s, 1990s nostalgia? Either way, it's up there. It should be in a lot of people's top fives.
Both of those movies. I love those movies. If you haven't seen Above the Rim, you should watch it too. And Tupac is amazing.
Wait. So I'm unfamiliar with Above the Rim, so I definitely have to put that on my radar. But Tupac's in a basketball movie?
Tupac's in a basketball movie, yeah. Yeah. He's a great actor. Really great actor, or was, but yes.
who knows? Maybe we could get some holograms. We'll get the hologram Tupac, and we can have it remade in a few years.
Yeah, he's not actually he's not playing basketball. He's kind of a problem for the person playing basketball, but he is a big part of the storyline.
All right, Kayla. Thank you, like I said, for coming on. We really appreciate your time here. Like it means a lot. Now, in terms of like following you, keeping up with everything you're doing, you have to do the obligatory plug. So tell us, where can we find you? Where can we listen to you? Where can we see you? All that good stuff.
Thank you so much for having me. I want to say that first. I really appreciate it. So the place I'm most active is my Instagram. It's at Kayla Autumn Ward. I do have a Twitter. It's more political. So if you're not really wanted to go into that, may not follow me there, but just look me up, Kayla Ward. I do have a YouTube channel. Again, just Kayla Ward Official, I think. I haven't done a YouTube video in over a year, but a good part of my transition is on there and a lot of educational stuff if people are interested in learning that.
You probably document your life and times with your squirrel friends too, I've noticed on your Instagram. How did you get squirrels to actually just come up to you? I never have managed that. They always just run.
2 years ago now, I lost one of my cats. He passed away. He got very sick. My other cat got really lonely. So when we moved here, I wanted to get her some entertainment. I noticed she loves to see birds on TV, but the TV won't stay on all day when I was at work. So I started putting bird seed out on the balcony for the birds, but the squirrels came up. And they got very familiar. They would come to my window every day or my patio door, and they would just stand there and look inside, kind of like a creeper, like a little peeping Tom squirrel, and just wait for me to open the door. And they would almost kind of come right to the edge of the door and just wait for me to hand them seeds or peanuts. And I got to the point where I could pet them. I could hold one of them. Yeah, they got very friendly.
Kayla, like I said, you have the fullest support of this podcast. Anytime you need or want to talk in the future, we'd love to have you back again.
Thank you.
All right, Kayla. Oh,
I have to mention
money jumping in.
I really like your pop collection.
Oh, thank you.
I've unfortunately had to stop buying them because it was getting too expensive and it was getting too much.
How many do you have?
I would say about 50, and like maybe 3 or 4 of them are signed.
Okay.
I got my biggest ones is Kimberly, the original Kimberly from the Power Rangers.
Okay.
I have her signature. I have Tommy, and I have the voice actor for Gears of War who plays Marcus Phoenix. So pretty good collection.
Yeah. I have a friend that he ended up selling them at some point to help kind of fund his studio, but he was the one that got me into it. He had over 5,000 of them.
Wow. Dang.
And it was just typically he would go and buy a bunch. I'd join him and he'd be like, hey, they give me a better deal if I throw in some of these commons. Are there any that you want? And so I built up my collection that way. I started with the Care Bears, and then, all these sports ones came out. I had to have them, especially my Chicago Cubs. And it just grew. And so my biggest ones now are some of my Scooby-Doos, like the colored Scooby-Doos, like the pink and green ones. They're worth quite a bit.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Kayla. Well, we'll let you go on your way. We got a big announcement to kind of head on here. Is there anything last things you want to say before you head on out?
No, I really appreciate you guys. I thank you for being understanding, for wanting to talk about the subject and hopefully educate some of your listeners. I just want people to look at things with an open heart and an open mind and understand that we're all different. There's always going to be things that separate us, but instead of letting it separate us, we should all just come together. That's what sports does. It brings us together, either as fans or competitors or, that good rivalry of, I don't want the Lakers to win. Sorry. It's fun. We can have fun with it, and people should be allowed to have fun in sports. It is competitive. We do want to win, but it's also just having fun. So I appreciate you guys so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Kayla. I just want to say, we appreciate your honesty, right, and your willingness to open up to us. We hope that it's been educational, not just for us. I think I've learned a lot, but for all of our listeners, for all of our viewers, we hope that no matter what side of the aisle they're on, right, even if they haven't completely changed on the subject, at least they're more enlightened, more educated, and know the struggles that trans athletes go through. So thank you. We really appreciated having you on.
Absolutely.
The legendary official Kayla Ward. Check her out, guys. It is just us now. Again, can't thank Kayla enough. It's awesome that she was willing to jump on here. Hey, we know it's a polarizing topic, but she came out here, she rocked it, and we highly encourage all our listeners to check her out, listen to her story. Hopefully, maybe, like Dre said, we're probably not going to change like a ton of people's minds with this one, but at the very least, you're listening to both sides of the aisle. I think that's good for establishing a dialogue moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I personally think our sort of stance as podcast hosts is we want to be as neutral as possible, just get you opinions, right, from different people and just help educate, right, get their honesty, get their feedback. And so we're not trying to necessarily change anybody's minds per se, but, you know, we want to give you the facts. We want to give you the honesty of people that have gone through those situations. So hopefully you thought this was educational. Hopefully you're feeling a little bit more enlightened on the subject to help you make your decision, no matter which side of the aisle that you do fall on.
Alrighty, guys. Time for the big announcement. Officially, the Slump Buster podcast. We're now partners with Manscaped.com. Free agents period's done. We have no live sports on TV. There's increasing excitement about the NFL draft. Well, with the NFL draft, there's new beginnings. Why don't I give your balls a little bit of a new beginning? I'm talking about ball trimmers. Manscaped offers precision engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped is the only men's brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming and hygiene. There's nothing better than finding a diamond in the rough in the fifth round. The Manscaped Perfect Package 3.0 will help you find that in yourself. When you trim the hedges, the tree stands taller. Guys, I gotta tell you, do you have any interesting manscaping stories here?
Okay, so I got one. So imagine a 14-year-old Christian Rogers has a full bush but doesn't know what to do with it. So he decides to get a pair of clippers, but he doesn't anticipate how old these clippers are. He barely goes over maybe less than an inch, and the pair of clippers rip out a patch of hair. So this is exactly why I'm glad that we are partnered up with Manscaped.
Just straight ripped them? Just like...
Yes, and it was very traumatizing.
God, do you just have like flashbacks every now and then?
Yes, every now and then, but I was very ignorant at the time. So now whenever I purchase new clippers or anything, I make sure that they're the new and they're the best in the market.
Well, you know, like I said, you won't have to worry about that with the Lawnmower 3.0. You won't have to worry about that with Manscaped. They have the Perfect Package kits, 3.0 kit, come with the new and improved Lawnmower 3.0. It's waterproof, it's cordless, and a ton of other liquid formulations come in this package as well to kind of like round out the routine. So that way you don't have these issues moving forward, C-Money. This third generation trimmer features a cutting edge ceramic blade to prevent manscaping accidents. Millions of balls are now nick-free thanks to Manscaped Advanced Skincare Technology. No nicks. And of course, let's not forget about the Crop Preserver, an anti-chafing ball deodorant and moisturizer. You already put deodorant on your armpits, right? So why are you not putting it on the nastiest parts of your body, the smelliest parts of the body? Just makes sense. Subscribers get a new replacement blade refill for your lawnmower trimmer delivered to your door every 3 months, making sure your trimmer always stays fresh and clean. For a limited time offer, subscribers get not one, but 2 free gifts. The Shed Travel Bag, $39 added value, and the patented high-performance, anti-chafing Manscaped Boxer Briefs. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code SLUMP, as in Slump Buster. We're here to bust the slump. Well, how about you type in slump into that promo code field at manscaped.com. And hey, if you guys are in any slumps, proper male hygiene, I think, is the right way to go about busting that. Do yourself a favor and always use the right tools for the job. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code SLUMP at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use SLUMP. Manscaped is the best when it comes to men's grooming. Get yourself the Joe Burrow of trimmers, the Lawnmower 3.0. If you listen to any other podcast, if you listen to anything sports related, you probably have heard that name kind of like matriculate over the last few years. And we are super excited to work with Manscaped. I mean, we think they're the perfect partner, and we definitely do appreciate them taking the time to look at the Slump Buster podcast.
And honestly, they're just fun. Like, their commercials always make me laugh. Every time I'm watching a YouTube video, the ads just pop up. And let me just say, they're the only ads that I don't skip.
Only ads you don't skip. I hope that our listeners have not skipped to the end of this, have listened, because we're trying to save you some money. Like I said, we're trying to bust you out of your slump, get you the perfect package, get you the Lawnmower 3.0, get you all these goodies. So check them out, manscaped.com, promo code SLUMP. Well, I think that should wrap it up for this show. Thank you so much again to our guest, Kayla Ward. Thank you so much to C-Money for hopping on, Dre for hopping on. Go ahead and check out @SlumpBusterPod on IG, @SlumpBusterPodcast on Twitter. Find us on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play Store, or our YouTube channel. Stay safe, happy, and healthy, and we'll see you next week.